Hey, this is Pablo from Cabo Labs, Health Informatics. This is a quick video for my students of the clinical database design and implementation with openEHR course. The idea of this small video is to give some information about the assignments. So just to give you context about the assignments and the deadlines, this might be of help. So this is the virtual campus here. We already had two sessions. The first session was about the clinical information requirements in general. And we saw most of the openEHR information model for clinical information. And on the second session, we reviewed the available technologies for implementing databases in general. So we talk about relational databases, object-oriented, document-oriented, XML, JSON databases, graph databases, key value, etc., etc., etc. And we saw some techniques to implement the object relational mapping that is used a lot because we work with object-oriented languages, and most of the applications are developed using relational databases. So the object relational mapping is a technique, and there are many frameworks and libraries that implement that technique. So it is useful to know about it. And on both sessions, we presented two assignments. So the first assignment will you will be able to deliver until Sunday. It's Sunday at midnight. This the first assignment will end. So you have time to deliver until that, and the next assignment is until June 25th. If you click here on assignment 1, you will have a small PDF here that is the description of the assignment. So the first assignment is about designing your first clinical database following the openEHR model. So it's all about what we saw on the first session. We saw most of the model, and this is about a small piece of that model. Is the EHR compositions that are clinical documents, and event context, that is context information about clinical documents. Yeah, so this is all the description you have here, how to implement, how to design. This is about designing, not implementation. So this is about a document you should deliver with that design, and some queries that you should also deliver, not as an implementation, but as a design, just in a pseudo language, a pseudo query language, like SQL or something similar. But this is not for real testing. It's just a conceptual assignment to see what you can do, really, to evaluate your current knowledge and your current skills, etc. So we can compare your initial assignment with the latest assignment and see the progress there. That's the basic idea of the first assignment. It's only designed for the database. It's pretty small database, and the queries also are very, very simple. So it might take you maybe 30 minutes to finish that assignment, 1 hour tops. Yeah, and the assignment 2 is bigger, it's more difficult, and that is why it also has more points. Yeah, so if you click on the PDF there, you will see the assignment 2. You have 40. It's almost half of the points of the whole course is this assignment. So you have more time also to deliver this assignment. Remember that with 50 points over 100, you will approve the course. So this assignment is important. Yeah. So this is our implementation. So we did a little design on the first assignment, and this is about creating an actual database. And on this assignment, please read the description carefully because each step is important. The idea is to implement this simplified information model in a database, but following what we saw in session 2 about object relational mapping. So you need to follow the rules we saw that apply to object relational mapping, and you should deliver the implemented database, and you also should deliver a small documentation that explains your decisions. So you need to show that you considered the rules that we saw on the second session. Yeah. So this is about clinical documents, but the internal structure of the clinical documents. On the first assignment, we didn't include anything related to the internal structure of the clinical documents. Now we go one step further, and here you have clinical documents that in openEHR we call them compositions. The main context that was also included in the first assignment, but you also have the internal structure here that is for storing blood pressure measurements. That's the basic idea. And you also have this small piece at the top that is the metadata that links the information model with the archetype model. And we talk about that in the second session. So you need to watch the recording of the second session to understand what we talk about, archetypes, the information model, and how we link those models. We have an archetype model and the information model. And these classes, lookup table and archetype, allow us to link those models together. And we talk about that is needed to not only to store information, but to use the information that we store, to query the information, to process the information. That allows to have in semantic interoperability, really. Yeah. So this is the model you should implement using ORM, object relational mapping, that we saw on session 2. Yeah. And you also will do the loading of that model with these data sets that I provide to you. So this is not a description of the tables that you will have. You need to create the tables based on the model that you have here and the rules we saw on session 2 about object relational mapping, and then considering these, loading the correspondent values for each attribute on your design of the database, on your implementation of the database. This is not the tables that you should implement. You should not follow this as a table specification. This is just that this data corresponds to your design, where you want to store, or where you designed to store the compositions, the clinical documents. So this should be there, but depends on your design. This is not that you should have a table called composition, or you should have a table called archetype. You might model this in a different way. You might have more tables, less tables than this, etc. With the rules, following, of course, the rules we saw about object relational mapping on session 2. But the correspondent, let's say, at archetype ID to the correspondent archetyped class should have this value loaded in the database. But that depends on your structure. Yeah. If you have any questions about this, please use the Virtual Campus Forum to ask questions about if you get confused about these being tables and loading that in your structure instead of following this as the structure. Please, any questions that you have, let me know. I'm here to help you. So you have the model that you need to implement, do the design and implement using observational mapping. We saw session 2. You have here data to load, data sets to load in your model. Yeah, you have some description there. Please read. I know this is long, but each step is uh, something useful that you can use. So please read this document a couple of times before starting with the assignment 2. And then you should implement, not only design, a couple of queries. So just simple queries considering the model I showed you before. Yeah. And then there is some information about the structure of what you should deliver. I will test your deliver. So you need to tell me in the documentation which database did you use, how to load the files that you will provide. You might provide some database dumps or some SQL scripts. You need to tell me which database should I use, how to load that script or that dump file. Yeah, everything that I need to do, you should include that in the documentation. Yeah, because I will test this. I will load your model. I will load your data. Yeah, I will execute those SQLs or load those dumps, and I will execute the queries to evaluate this assignment. Yeah, so your documentation should be clear about this and guide me through the process of loading and executing the queries. Yeah, if you want to include some screenshots, that will help me, etc., etc., etc. If you include good documentation, that will give you more points. If your documentation is poor, that will give you less points. That is pretty basic. But read through this. I recommend some tools to use. These are tools that I'm used to use, so it's easier for me to test using like MySQL or Postgres. If you use another database, you need to tell me more information. The database that you use, the specific version, how to process the file, the things that I need to install, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, to make things easier for you and for me, it will be easier if you use just MySQL and some MySQL manager. Like I use Heidi SQL on Windows. That is very useful. I have another. I have SQL Pro, I think, in Mac OS. That is also very easy to use. Or you can use Postgres and the PG admin. That is also very easy to use. So if you can use any of those, that will be great and will be easier for me to test and evaluate your assignment. I hope this helped you in small, guide in this small video in what I expect for these deliveries, for these assignments. And if you have any questions, please go to here in the virtual campus. You have here the forum, so you can just publish a question there, and I will answer as soon as possible. Yeah, and that's all. Thank you.